Good evening, you're watching The Big Story with me, Haryanto Diman. Subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you will not miss a single episode. With the US dropping its mask mandate on public transport, should you still mask up when you're on a plane? One of the world's leading experts on COVID-19 tells the Straits Times he will continue to wear a mask on planes, trains and buses, even when it's no longer compulsory to do so. As a special advisor to the President of the European Commission on COVID-19, he also shares his thoughts on the need for booster shots every year.
The epidemic is not over by any means. COVID is still among us. People are being infected every day by this Omicron variant. Fortunately, in countries like Singapore or in Europe, we are protected because of vaccines, so the death rate is going down and so on, but it's not over yet. And we'll have to learn to live with this virus as societies, but I think that's perfectly doable.
What about boosters? Is it something we'll need in the future?
The likely scenario is that we will need an annual vaccination called booster. In Europe, this is before the winter, because that's when we always have the flu and other respiratory infections, and that's what also in the European Union now we're really preparing for that. Yeah, for Singapore, because you have no strong seasonality, so there will be a need also, I think, for boosters now and then, but how exactly, that's something that you have to determine yourself here.
So, you travel a lot, and right now everybody's wearing masks on planes. Will you continue wearing masks on planes in future when it's not compulsory?
For the foreseeable future, I will definitely continue to wear masks on planes because the virus is still circulating. The last thing I want is to have become infected again. And maybe in a few years' time, when this virus is completely under control and we have very effective vaccines, I will stop doing that. But on the planes, in the bus, in the underground, the metro, I will continue to wear, which is still the case in Belgium, where I'm from, but of course not in many other countries.
Hong Kong is relaxing its COVID-19 rules from today as it looks to get its economy back on track following its fifth and worst wave of the pandemic. And to prepare for reopening, places like massage parlors were being disinfected yesterday. Now, under the loosened restrictions, dine-in services at restaurants will be extended to 10 p.m. from 6 p.m. currently, and there can be up to 4 diners at a table from 2. The number of people that can gather publicly is also raised from 2 to 4, and there's no longer a ban on private gatherings involving more than 2 households. Premises including gyms, massage parlors, museums, cinemas, religious places, playgrounds and sports venues can reopen but must run at only half their capacity. But bars will remain closed, as will public beaches, pools and barbecue sites. With more is Assistant Foreign Editor Magdalene Fung, who is connecting from Hong Kong. Magdalene, what's the mood like today when the rules are finally being eased?
The streets are definitely, they seem a little more crowded today compared with the previous days when the groups of 2 restrictions were still in effect. There's a palpable sense of excitement among some locals. For example, restaurants are a little more crowded in some places, though not necessarily filled to the brim, because today is a weekday and most people have to work after all. So we may start seeing bigger crowds only later this evening when the 6 p.m. dine-in ban is lifted, or over the weekend. Staff at shops earlier today, they say business is noticeably busier today. Of course, they are happier about it, even if slightly overworked. I'm told that many restaurants, both high-end and middle of the range, are already fully booked for dinner and over the weekend. How was it like before these rules were lifted today? To be honest, many people have not been keeping strictly to these restrictions all the time, especially over the Easter 4 days long holidays this past weekend, after the easing was already announced but had not yet taken effect. So over this past weekend, the crowds were already out in full force. no social distancing observed as the crowds, they squeezed into very crowded ferries at the piers to visit the outlying islands. Personally, I was at Lama and Chong Chau Islands over the weekend, and as a law-abiding Singaporean who has only just arrived in Hong Kong 2 weeks ago, it was a bit of a culture shock for me.
Health authorities haven't ruled out the plan to test Hong Kong's entire population. Is there a timeline on when that is starting? And if positive cases are detected, is it likely that the city would go back into lockdown?
Hong Kong authorities have not ruled out their plan to test the whole population, but so far they have not given any fixed timeline for going about it or how they will do it. Is it to make everyone go and queue up to take PCR tests at mobile or community testing centers? Or will it be to force everyone to do self-administered RAT testing at home and then report it online? That we don't know yet. What we do know, however, is that an editorial published in China's official People's Daily today has commented that in order to reopen borders between Hong Kong and mainland China, that's something that the Hong Kong government has said is topmost on its priority list. So reopening with the mainland China. So People's Daily today commented that in order to do so, keeping closely to China's dynamic zero COVID-19 policy is imperative. It's a necessary condition to reopening. The editorial said that Hong Kong's COVID situation is an integral part of how China as a whole is dealing with a pandemic. And so I doubt there will be very much more loosening or reopening of the borders until Hong Kong can be seen to have its COVID situation very tightly under control. Meanwhile, having observed the lack of social distancing over this holiday weekend, I have a suspicion that there may soon be a rebound of cases, maybe not necessarily reflected in the official numbers because that's also dependent on whether people are willing to report their infections. And of course, so far, the people that I've spoken to are not keen to do that. And people do fear and are quite wary of having a sixth wave come upon them very quickly. And well, for the sake of the Hong Kong economy and the sanity of its locals here, I do hope that will not be the case.
Well, Magdalene, thank you so much for the update. Assistant Foreign Editor Magdalene Fung in Hong Kong. Meanwhile, at the POA Forum for Asia, China President Xi Jinping defends his country's lockdown-dependent approach to fighting the pandemic, even as he reassures the world that China is still committed to open its economy. Speaking at the forum's opening ceremony, he says, quote, "It is essential that countries support each other, better coordinate response measures, and improve global public health governance so as to form a strong international synergy against the pandemic." Mr. Xi, though, made no mention of Shanghai's lockdown or the growing debate over the costs of China's COVID-0 strategy. In local news, Terry Shi, editor of the now defunct socio-political site The Online Citizen, was sentenced to 3 weeks jail for criminal defamation. He was found guilty last November of defaming cabinet members by approving the publication of a letter in September 2018 that alleged, quote, corruption at the highest echelons. The writer of the letter, Daniel D. Costa Agustin, was handed the same sentence, as well as an additional penalty of 3 months jail for an offence under the Computer Misuse Act. Giant Supermarket has slashed the price of its Giant Farm fresh eggs by $1 a day after FairPrice offered a 55-cent discount on its house brand eggs. From today until Hari Raya on May 3rd, you can snap up a tray of 30 eggs for $6.50 instead of $7.50. But do note, there's a limit of 2 trays per customer. At the next Istana Open House on May 7th, to mark both Labor Day and Hari Raya Puasa, the main building will be open to the public for the first time since the start of the pandemic. All visitors must apply for tickets in advance, capped at 5 each and in 2-hour time slots. If tickets are oversubscribed, they will be allocated via an electronic balloting system. You may find his name familiar. Rod Montero is back in Singapore and rejoins 1FM 91.3, the same radio station that fired him in 2013 over an inappropriate telephone prank on a listener. His new show is on Saturday mornings from 8 a.m. to noon, starting this weekend. First Flight Out is a new series of travel guides and films by ST's correspondents, and that's our first live pick for this week. Thailand correspondent Tan Tam Mei joins us from Bangkok. Tam Mei, talk us through the video you made. Give us a sense of what has changed or hasn't changed in Bangkok and what travelers need to know for their trip.
Yeah, I think you can expect the same shopping and food experience that Bangkok's famous for, because the malls and Siam Street are still open, so don't worry. But of course, there's a number of shops that have closed, and when you're chart, you can see quite clearly that there are quite a few merchants didn't survive the pandemic. But I guess that's what we see everywhere in the tourism industry, and it's really only a matter of time before things get better, I hope. And for some of the recommendations that we gave, that actually, for example, Jot Fairs is actually considered a rebirth of the famous Ratchada train night market that a lot of people were upset over when it closed. So this new night market, Jot Fairs, opened last year, and it's basically the same vendors, but in a new and even more Instagrammable space. You've got your vintage cars, fairy lights, lots of food, and you can even do your nails at some of the booths. And I think for guys, when they go to this market, they'll be quite surprised to find a lot of guys' clothes, accessories, which used to be quite rare. So I think that's something they can look forward to. And I think coming to Bangkok, one of the hidden gems that I really enjoyed in introducing to people in the video is actually Bang Krachao. It's actually not new, but only locals really knew about it. They go cycling there, they go there to enjoy greenery. And I think for lots of tourists, it's something a bit more local and it's worth a short day trip. This island is just about 5 minutes away from Bangkok City. And, it's a place where it used to have a lot of ethnic people and it's largely undeveloped. So actually you can still see nature and really see the culture of that particular district. So as with all pandemic travel, things change. But right now you need a Thailand pass to enter Thailand. So that's like approval to come into Bangkok. And you also need to do a entry PCR test when you land. And you have to go and wait in a hotel overnight on your first day to wait for the results. But we heard that things might change in the next few weeks. So, do keep a lookout for the announcements. All these measures that I just mentioned could actually be gone in the next few weeks. There's a lot of pressure on the Thai government to ease entry because countries around, like actually Singapore or even regional neighbors are actually easing out all the restrictions. So I think Thailand is also quite pressured to do it. So hopefully soon it could be easier to enter Thailand. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the sharing, Thailand correspondent Tan Tam Mei. Now, whether it's breakfast or lunch, you can never go wrong with this hawker stall. STFood online editor Hedy Khoo has paid a visit to Heavens at Ghim Moh. Tell us, did you have the appam or thosai?
I had both and more than just that because they have a few variations. So the top pick is the Royal Thosai, which is their signature dish. It's $5 for a really gigantic looking thosai. And although it's $5, you're going to be so full and satisfied after eating this, you don't have to eat anything else. So I suggest you go with a friend so that you can share a couple of dishes so that you can have a taste of all the others, the other types of dishes that the stall has to offer, which is mainly thosai and appam. And these are made from scratch in-house, and they are really, really hardcore about this. They grind their own black lentils, their own pony rice, and then they ferment the batter for 8 hours. And for the appam, there's coconut milk added to it, and they are so finicky that everything has to be so fresh. Right down to the chutneys, they make it on their own. So for the royal thosai, it's got this filling of crunchy red onion, tender masala potato, melted cheddar cheese, and butter. Really, really satisfying to bite into. And what really impressed me is that, it stays crispy even though I was taking my time taking pictures of it. But yeah, so impressive. And another thing to try is the Princess Appam, which is $3.50 a piece. It also comes with melted butter and melted cheddar cheese. But what I really like is the plain appam. So you can get it for I think it's 2 pieces for $3. And while a lot of people usually think of appam, including myself, I used to, just think of it as you have to eat it with the red sugar and the fresh grated coconut. But at this stall, they recommended that I try it with their savory chutneys. So the red tomato and chili chutney, it packs quite a spicy kick, and the coconut chutney is so well textured from the use of fresh coconut, grated coconut, and it goes so well with the plain appam. Although I must say that both the thosai and the appam for the plain versions, they already taste so good on their own. You can eat it. Try a bite without the chutneys or without the sugar and the coconut, and then try it with the chutneys and the coconut, and then you can see the difference for yourself. Really worth going down to Ghim Moh, even if you don't live anywhere around there.
I will definitely try it because I'm a fan of thosai. Well, thank you so much, Hedy. STFood online editor, Hedy Khoo. Now, how about something fun you could do over the weekend? Arts correspondent Arthur Sim is here to give us a sneak peek of his video that will premiere on Sunday. Arthur, you've explored works of art all around Singapore. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, Singapore has a lot of sculptures by very famous artists, and some of them are actually worth millions. So I went to look for the top 10, and at Millennium Singapore, there are 6 sculptures by the American artist Roy Lichtenstein, and he's famous for painting the comic book style illustrations, and the sculptures are in the same style. But what's interesting is that he also designed the landscape elements, and that makes the space that the sculptures are in really integrated with the architecture. Another interesting discovery is on the rooftop of Orchard Central. It's an installation by the Japanese artist Yayoi Kusama, and she's sometimes known as the polka dot princess because she likes to put polka dots on everything. So here she created a fantasy garden on the rooftop, and it is a little bit surreal to go up there to see this, but I think it works because Kusama's work is also a bit surreal. And then there's Henry Moore. I'm always in awe of his work when I walk past OCBC Center. He's really one of the masters of modern art, and it's almost like having a Picasso on your sidewalk. And this work, the large reclining figure, is probably the most valuable work of public art that we have. So really, there's quite a lot to see. If you want to see all 10 of them, you can look me up on straitstimes.com this weekend. You can also find out how much the artworks might be worth.
Well, Arthur, looks like I've got my weekend sorted. Well, thank you so much. And that was arts correspondent Arthur Sim. Now, whether it's sun, sea or snow, if you're having a hard time deciding on where to go for your next holiday, make sure you check out our new handy travel planner. It's quick and easy to use. Passport, check. Bag, check. Hair, check. But wait a minute, my other travel documents. Hold up. With borders opening up around the world, travelers now have many more holiday options. But travel as we know it is not quite how it was before the pandemic. Different places, different rules and requirements. And so, if you're still unsure of the details, Don't worry, we've got you covered. Let's check out ST's new travel planner to find out what the entry requirements are for your next destination. You can also find information on the current COVID-19 restrictions for the particular place you are going to, like whether you need to wear a mask indoors or outdoors, and so on. As for me, I'm planning to go to Thailand. Apart from being fully vaccinated, I have to take an on-arrival PCR test and I must stay in the hotel room until a negative result is confirmed. On top of that, I will have to take an ART test on day 5 and record the result on Thailand's contact tracing app. Face masks are still compulsory indoors like Singapore, but unlike Singapore, nightclubs there are still closed. If you're still undecided on where to go, you could use ST's travel planner to check out the country which has the least restrictions. That way, you don't have to worry about administrative hassles. Looks like the UK is a good option. Currently, there are no entry requirements like quarantine or testing. And while face masks are recommended in crowded or enclosed spaces, everything else is pretty much business as usual. Wherever your holiday destination may be, this planner will come in handy for your travel preparations. Do check out ST's guide to travel rules around the world. Go to str.sg/ST holiday to find out which countries are open and what's required. Visit straitstimes.com for more news and our YouTube channel for more videos. Subscribe by hitting the red button below. I'm Haryanto Diman. See you tomorrow for more stories on The Big Story.